seems everything is okay for now.
Yes, brother. Yep.
Well, in my paper, I'm not presenting a real result of something technical, but I am more precisely addressing some problems that should be faced because now we are facing the digital transformation. So, although I am carrying out research on cybersecurity, now I am addressing these issues of digital transformation. First of all, I want to discuss the difference between the traditional computer science and the information technology, because very often there is some confusion about them. Then I want to address the problem given by the presence of errors in several processes. We know that humans are subject to errors, but this is a big waste of time and money. So we can get more efficiency in all senses by recovering from, by well recovering from errors. Without forgetting what is the digital hygiene, because today what happens to be a very easy topic, a very easy subject for a computer scientist, it is not for an end user that is not expert in computer science and in information technology. Of course, education plays a crucial role, and we will spend some few words about education by addressing some particular need we have. I want to start by saying that while computer science is actually a real science addressing what we are doing about our research about computers and so on, I would call information technology what results from the transfer from computer science to industry, public administration, and several other bodies. I mean that there is always a powerful, a big gap between computer science and information technology. Indeed, the information technology is introducing solutions and tools that was invented by computer science 20 years before. So typically we have a big difference between the time of innovation given by computer science and by the information technology. In addition, I want to say that we need to be more efficient. And for being more efficient, we observe some facts. As I said, the human processes are subject to errors. And whatever type of a process, even if the process is supported by information technology, of course, it is not just a process that is a running program, but it is a more articulated activity that is led by a human person, that is, we call it an end user. And of course, it is not a computer scientist, it is not an information technologist. We observed the number of errors is a high number, higher than wanted. And then we need to spend a lot of time and money for repairing from errors. So errors are the source of high costs in terms of time and in terms of money. In addition, I wanted to say that universities are not considering error management as a subject. So people are exiting from university without having any knowledge about the way to face with the errors. So what we want to introduce? We want to define a framework for managing errors. And I would say that it's also very important collecting best practices for feeding such a framework. Let me go back to the difference between computer science and information technology, because we told about the transfer from computer science towards information technology. Who should be responsible for these transfers? The problem is that the transfer, it seems very easy and trivial for the computer scientist. IT people are generally very technical and are unprepared for instructing end users at using at the best the tool they have. And what is easy to understand that the best choice for carrying this type of transfer is the computer scientist. Although often the computer scientist doesn't like it. In addition, I would say that it is a task that should be led by a senior computer scientist, because although subjects are very easy in general, we need great sensitivity and experience that are not generally possessed by young people. Typically, we need decades of experience. Let me talk about some errors, some typical errors we face in normal processes. I again want to repeat that I'm talking about processes that are done by end user. They are people not working in a particular way in information technology or computer science. They are people that are supported by information technology, of course. The first kind of error, I would say that is they are the so-called governance errors, and the culprit is the management. Very often information security is left to IT people, and this means that IT people should take important decisions, like to classify information, to decide what is confidential, and so on. But this type of decision should be taken by the management. Another type of problem is that there are wrong or ambiguous requirements for information security. And it should be defined the process for managing this type of problems, so that any possible error in defining the requirements of information security can be fixed. In addition, we have errors coming from the end user side, and they can apply policies in a wrong way. I would say that this is a human problem that is related to something like motivation, satisfaction, interest, focus, and so on. I would say also that under an information technology or computer science point of view, this is not needing a countermeasure. Other error coming from end users are typos. So in our processes, we should prefer to let the owner of information to type information inside our platforms. Or we can use optical technologies like transferring information by reading QR codes and so on. Another type of problem is coming from the omission of important details. Typically, this is coming from the process designer. And omitting information will determine a waste of time, maybe later. And what happens is that end users can be used at understanding the importance of some omitted information so that they can then they can provide some feedback so that the IT people can provide a procedure for inserting the omitted information by time. Of course, this is just theory because omitted information not always is available. We want also to consider problems coming from software, because the software is, of course, providing several bugs or missing functions, or maybe they have functions, but they are hidden. In general, what is unacceptable is that if we use the software for becoming more efficient, we don't have to face problems coming from software and not coming from the application domain. So first of all, I would propose to let users participate in the software life cycle. Of course, we need to avoid repetitions of data. And what is important is that we should be aware of other platforms, other applications, so that we could consider the design of software for being the software carrying the interoperability. This is needing, of course, so-called open approach that is the opposite of what happens in many cases. In many cases, we can get in the vendor lock-in so that we must stay with a single vendor for a long time, even if we don't want. Last but not least, I would say that we should make security using cryptography, avoiding application level security, and the best way is using information theoretic security. I want to remind that it is that type of security where the attacker, even having infinite computational power, cannot reach the target. Other problems are typically coming from inventory not up to date, and they should be trustworthy because we need them in some moments, and we cannot wait in that moments for making the inventory up to date. So the process of updating the inventory should be continuous, and of course, should be including information like the management of software licenses. Incidents can be not well managed. This means that for managing incidents and also accidents, we never have to forget the requirement for coming from the information security, so that in many organizations, especially small and medium enterprises, there is not a clear process of collecting information about incidents and reacting to incidents. Also, anomalies should be reported. And in this, to this purpose, of course, outdated inventories are a real obstacle. I insist on the importance of the so-called digital hygiene. That is something that it is embracing every detail of operativity of the end user. So the end user should be not educated at letting security entrusted by an antivirus, because antivirus will fail in many occasions, and they should not learn icons, buttons, or details about the interface, but they should learn what is behind this type of information, without going too much in depth, of course. In addition, we want to remind that computers are born aseptic. So we have to control what type of files can reach the computer. So we can consider that there are some possible sources like USB pens or file sharing systems, instant messaging or emails, or even visiting a malicious website. What is important, and I want to tell this to IT people, it is not imposing rules that are fueling careless behavior, because we can see a lot of situations where people are inflicted by several type of requirements, and they are wasting a lot of time, and they are encouraging in some way incautious behaviors. What is important in this way is that digitalization is something that can be improved. And we have to remind that it was introduced for increasing the efficiency. Waste and inefficiency are resulting very often from choices in software that we cannot accept. If just we consider the time spent by all users, by some organization to recover lost or forgotten passwords, because there are a lot of rules about passwords. And of course, errors are very human. And what is not good is solving errors in some improvised way. I would say that is deplorable. And a good procedure for solving error should not be lost. And so we should consider the possibility of managing in some explicit way some tool for recovering from some typical errors. And this should be done in a systematic way. Decided. We consider what happens at the education level. I would say that we can observe three types of education. That is education for the management, education for IT people, and education for end users. Actually, what it is already existing is education for IT people, because our university are focusing the way to study in detail, to go deep for the subject that is computer science, I would say. But there is no systematic education for management for end users. But this is very important, because the management is dealing with problems like strategies and defining policies. And it is very important to have a complete vision about the goals of the company and what are the needs of the company. This is visible at management level. The opposite is provided by end users. They are not completely aware about objectives of the company. It is useless, I would say, to give end users a list of rules that should be respected, because the environment is continuously evolving, so that by saying remind this icon or look for this button is not good just because things are changing very fastly in the time, so that it is very important that end users are aware about what is behind some rules. So it is more important to give this type of information to end users rather than graphical or interface details. This is very important, and typically I have never met this type of education because in any path of learning, I've met end users that were studying about tools like antiviruses and the position of buttons and the mechanical way to obtain some result. And we have not forget the education at the error management, because this is interesting for every type of user. And of course, this is impacting the whole organization and should be considered also at the management level. Also, we should not forget the digital hygiene, and that is mainly interesting for end users. And if your computer is aseptic when you buy the computer, you should maintain this computer aseptic, having a careful control about what type of files can reach the computer and what are the way that file can have for reaching the computer. And I am repeating about the idea that IT staff should be not inflicting mothering rules that end up in encouraging careless behavior by users, because this is exactly the opposite goal IT people were having. So let me see lastly this picture where I want to tell my view about digitalization. And if you can see in the center of the picture, we have the information technology that is an important support that is giving some help to some application domain. Here we can see 4 application domains that are shown in this picture, but we could have digitalization is something that is appearing like a strain in this picture that is impacting mainly information technology, but of course should be entering into the application domains because it is very critical to be able to keep into account the characteristics that are specific of every application domain. We remind that application domain have unique features, so that solution offered by the digitalization should be solving problems and issues for every application domain. And lastly, I want to thank you for your attention.